this conference, we include not only the frontier aspects of AI, the forward-looking things, but also everyday subjects such as international transfers, privacy by design, children's issues and women's issues. And in passing, I'm delighted to tell you that this year's conference, we've just about reached parity between male and female speakers. We've been working towards it, but I think we're there this year. Now, on to the title and the theme. Billions of people want services where they share their valuable data, but intensive data processing can be the enemy of privacy. The challenge for all of our companies is how to steer a path which brings the joy of new services, but are also ethical and legal. And this, when we get to it, yes. So what they're saying now, discussion in a company, they're saying, how's our new AI chatbot going? Great, it's only hallucinating sometimes. Only part of what it says is made up. Most of that isn't dangerous, but it's a black box, so we're not sure. So what's so great about that? It's getting lots of attention. So this cartoon shows that transparency is even more difficult in this age of artificial intelligence, with its black boxes and algorithms. Most people don't understand how they work, but we're all sure that AI is increasingly significant for us. Conference sessions cover the challenges of both deploying and regulating AI and new opportunities and problems it creates. There are clear benefits from mass collection of data on which AI relies to provide useful and popular services, equally a risk of alienating users if they feel vulnerable or the data sharing is hidden, adding up to creepy surveillance. So how can we reduce the risk that the golden age of innovation does not become the dark age of priceless data privacy lost forever? We cannot ensure this outcome, but we can face up to this problem in a civilized dialogue here, this conference, over the next 3 days. Company managers and shareholders know that privacy advocates call this the age of the surveillance society. So it's important that we consider the optimum way to regulate companies and to encourage them to embrace privacy values for reasons of self-interest. The most enlightened companies say that regulation is good to ensure a level playing field. As a result, some introduce privacy-friendly features. A few regulators have persuaded companies to pause the AI service. OpenAI in Italy last year, Meta in Ireland and the UK, both announced this step as recently as last month. Sometimes a regulator has to inform a company based outside the European Economic Area that their service comes within the scope of the EU GDPR. And on 9th of May this year, it is Garante issues such as decision on the processing of personal data carried out by Wikipedia. So we see here that regulators are becoming more assertive. To help us understand the issues from an all-round perspective, we've gathered together at this conference an extraordinary range of speakers from 17 countries: companies, law firms, consumer and privacy advocates, academics, and regulators. So we've got some of our regulators here, and they're all speaking for the first time. So I see in the audience Philippe Dufresne from Canada, hello, Alex White from Bermuda, Ulrich Kelber from Germany, Federal Commissioner from Germany, and maybe John Edwards is here somewhere, but I don't see him in the audience. Yeah, you can put your hand up, I don't know, I can't see it. But he is here, he was here last night. Okay. In addition, at this conference, we'll welcome speakers from several European institutions. And all the regulators and policy people have green dots on their badges, and the PLM people have blue dots. Now, what about the UK's position? Despite Brexit, the UK is not isolated from the rest of the international privacy law ecosystem, and the ICO does not sit on the sidelines. Instead, John Edwards and his team have continued working actively with their counterparts in the European Economic Area, member states, and in other fora such as the OECD, the Council of Europe, and the G7. In March this year, the UK Commissioner attended a high-level meeting in Brussels organised by the European Commission on safe data flows. This is a theme which was also discussed at the G7. So we see the ICO sort of warming up to the European Commission, which wasn't the case a couple of years ago. So we monitor all these developments in our P&B reports. Now, after the election later this week in the UK, a new UK government will not be trapped in a rigid post-Brexit posture and will be keen to reset its relationship with Brussels it's likely there will be a warming of such relationships. The European Data Protection Board is likely to invite the UK's ICO to join some of its meetings when relevant subjects are on the agenda and when both sides see a win-win to the UK's participation. Now, Valuable Data, Priceless Privacy is the title of the conference, and many of our sessions address the tension between these two concepts. Our conference image is a very simple treasure chest, as you see, with a lot of huge data bursting out from the treasure chest. And using the internet, we can buy many services. However, we can knowingly or unknowingly trade our personal data to get what we want. So we can compare it with this done. Our data is also captured by many unrelated organizations in real-time bidding, a process little understood by ordinary users. We understand it here in this room, but little understood by ordinary users of online services. In reality, even if some of the data is anonymized using privacy-enhancing technologies, which we're discussing in a session here at this conference, there's plenty of value in the treasure chest itself in the form of metadata. This treasure chest from the 16th century, covered with jewels, is in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. It's an image applying to many companies, not only big tech. On many privacy-related subjects, such as consent or pay, companies and consumers tell us that they would benefit from a common policy across Europe, because it's very uncomfortable to have different laws in different parts of Europe. The European Data Protection Board's opinion is that data is not a tradable commodity, so a plain statement of their policy. Now, although a clear statement of principle, data is not a tradable commodity, it is not the best way, not the way that today's society and the internet actually operates. For example, discount loyalty cards reveal a lot of information about us. Consent or pay does give the impression that the right to privacy in this context is a luxury reserved for the wealthy or the well-off, as the European Data Protection Board puts it. On the other hand, companies may resent their economic model being challenged by DPAs, because this raises the question, what is the proper function of a data protection authority? As a result, DPAs are increasingly working with other regulators, such as those responsible for competition, telecoms, and others, to develop a consistent regulatory framework. Certainly that's the case in the UK and Ireland. So how strict do we want our data protectors to be? Something reminded me of this recently. On a family cycling holiday in France in May, we passed a museum near Azay-le-Rideau in the Loire Valley. I noticed it was called, by coincidence, the Dufresne Museum. Yes, you see there, Dufresne Museum, Maurice Dufresne. And the advertisement outside reminded me and tells us, there we have an old steamroller, tells us that data protection authorities are not meant to be old steamrollers to squash the light out of innovation and commerce. I'm sure that Commissioner Philippe Dufresne here does not plan to do that when he gets his powers when the new privacy law in Canada is adopted. Well, if it's adopted, because it's still going through the parliamentary process, yes. But the DPA do need enough powers to regulate controllers and processes in a proportionate way. Now, the UK Data Protection Act, timing this conference the day before the UK election, is indeed good fortune. The UK Data Protection Act remains as it is for now. Companies can see the advantages of retaining the UK's data protection law as adequate by the European Commission without the risks of losing this status if a new law diverges too far from the EU norm. So the question is, how far is too far? For now, we have the certainty that the current UK law is good enough from the EU perspective, so giving companies a seamless framework of law across the continent, across the EEA anyway, and the UK. To encourage data sharing for research, leading to more innovation in products and services, such as those which are health-related, the current government made the case for a major revision of law. Obviously, there is a case for revising the law. But privacy advocates were not convinced. So we'll have to wait and see what the next government does, if anything, in the way of reforming the UK Data Protection Act. None of the political parties have said anything about what they're planning to do about data protection law. So we'll have to wait and see. We invite you all to come back next year to see what happened. So even without new laws, we can be certain that the role of data protection manager, the chief privacy officer, data lawyer, whatever you're called, will become increasingly complex if you add AI, artificial intelligence, to your many advisory roles, as you see in this image. So this officer is wearing many hats, but while you're doing so the top executive is bringing a wonderful crown. While you're doing the rest of your DPO role, can you also take the lead on generative AI? And I wonder whether that strikes a chord with some of you, whether you've been asked to bring AI into the work you do now. So everyone tells us that they enjoy the social and networking side of this conference, and quite a lot of that's already started last night. As you see on this slide, we enjoy our meals together in the medieval dining hall you'll see at lunchtime. The walks, the floating downstream in the punts, as you see on the right-hand side. And this evening at dinner, we're sure you'll enjoy the choir, vocal dimension, led by our own wonderful Valerie Taylor, one of the PLMB team. So thank you for listening. I declare this conference open.